Hello, this is Patrick at OneCNC West, and what we're going to do in this training video is pick up where we last left off and continue to apply toolpath to our part geometry. Now, in the last video, the last thing we did is we performed a Z-level finish command. Now, this worked great, and we used a ball end mill. And because we used a ball end mill, that means that the remaining material here at the base of the boss is going to be a fillet. Well, if we look at the part geometry, you can definitely see that we have a sharp corner. So what we can use is a tapered end mill and perform a profile operation to machine that nice sharp corner there. Before we do that, let's interrogate the angle of the boss so we can properly select the correct tool. I'm going to head over here to the NC Manager and select Verify, and from there we'll select the very first option. I'm going to take the cursor now and just left-click that edge. And if we look over here within the results, you can see that the angle was minus 78 degrees. So if you take 90 minus 78, that gives us a 12-degree taper. So that's the angle we'll use for our taper tool. Let's head over here to the Command Manager, select Stock Toolpaths, and for this we can just use a simple mill profile basic machining operation. Now take your cursor and you want to left-click where you want to begin the profile operation. I'm going to left click. Once we do that, we have these four arrows. These arrows determine the side and direction of cut. I want to climb cut on the outside, so I'm going to left click. Now my cursor changes to the word end. It wants me to select the end of the geometry where I want to stop the profile operation. Now I could click right here, but a shortcut is just hit the F3 key on the keyboard, function key 3. That selects the rest of the geometry. Once we've done that, we can right-hand mouse click, and now it's time to define a tool. This tool is going to be in turret position number 3. I already have my spindle speed and my feed rates put in there. I do want to point your attention to the tool type. Notice how that's grayed out. If we click down here on the little arrow, you can see that some of the tool types are grayed out and others are not. Now, the tool types that are not grayed out, those are the tools that OneCNC recommends for the machining operation. But that doesn't mean you can't use any of the grayed out tools. And that's exactly what we're doing here. I have an overall length of 1 inch 250 thousandths. That's how far the tool sticks out of the holder. And there's our taper angle at 12 degrees. By the way, this diameter here, this 1/2 inch, that's the very bottom diameter. All right, let's click next on that. That looks good. Now let's talk about options and why I have material top from geometry selected. Now, if that geometry that we're profiling was at Z0, then any depth of cut that I would take, OneCNC would push the tool away from the geometry to account for the taper. The deeper we cut, the more OneCNC pushes the tool away from the geometry. Again, just accounting for the taper on the tool. In this example, the geometry we're profiling is located at Z-1 inch, 125 thousandths. And that is exactly why I have material top from geometry selected. And it's also important to note that total depth is measured incrementally from the location of that geometry. And that's why I have total depth set to 0. All right, let's click next on this. We're going to be using cut levels. We'll click next. Don't need to worry about a step over or rough depths. I'm going to use 0 as finish leave on sides because this is going to be a finish pass. Don't need to worry about the wall taper. We'll click next on that. We don't need an extra finish pass. We'll click next. And for lead in and lead out, I'm using 45 degrees with a 200 thousandths radius. Let's click finish and let OneCNC generate the toolpath. I think that looks good. Let's take this into simulation and simulate the toolpaths. We'll head back over to the NC Manager. We're quickly going to right-hand mouse click on Toolpath Group and select Simulate Rest. From here, we're going to select Pick a Boundary. The top of the stock is going to be at Z0. The bottom of the stock is going to be at -1 inch 500 thousandths. We'll click OK, left-click the boundary, and then right-hand mouse click to simulate the toolpath. All right, so here's our roughing operation. Let's speed this up a little bit. I'm just clicking on the speed control slider in the lower left-hand corner. In fact, I'm going to speed this up even a little bit more here. So here's our roughing operation. Now we're going to switch tools to a ball end mill. and perform that machining at the very top of the boss. And don't forget, you can always rotate, pan, zoom in, and zoom out when you're performing the toolpath simulation. It's very, very nice. Let's kick up the speed a little bit more. And now I'm going to slow it down right when we get to that profile with using the taper tool. So you can see the radius left by the ball end mill. But now we're going to switch to that taper tool, which goes in there and gives us that nice sharp corner at the very base of the boss. All right, great. Let's exit out of the toolpath simulation and let's move on to the next toolpath. So let's perform another profile operation, but this time let's profile the boundary at the very bottom of the part. So we'll head back over to the command manager. Again, we're going to select Mill Profile Basic. I'm going to left click where I want to start the profile. Again, we have the 4 arrows. I'm going to select this arrow with a left click because I want a climb cut on the outside. And remember, you can hit the F3 key on the keyboard as a shortcut to select the rest of the geometry. Once we've done that, we can right-hand mouse click. Now, with the previous machining operations, we've manually defined a tool. Why don't we select a tool from the library this time? Now, you can access the tool library by clicking on Tool Changer or simply take your cursor and left click on the tool graphics. Now, the first tab says Recent. This shows you a list of all the recent tools that you've used. If you want to, you can select any one of these and you can use that tool. To access the library, click on the Library tab. You'll notice that the tools are categorized in different groups. We're going to be using end mill. For this machining operation, I'm going to be using a 3/4 inch high-speed end mill. So I'm going to left click, and once I do that, I can click OK. Notice how the speeds and feeds are automatically calculated. That's another benefit of using the tool library. Anytime you select a tool from the tool library, OneCNC is going to calculate the speeds and feeds. And that's because within the tool library, you'll notice there's information such as flutes and chip load. Very good. Now you can also overwrite these speeds and feeds if you want to, just by simply highlighting and typing in whatever value you'd like. I'm going to say that tool looks great. Let's put it in turret position number 4. That looks good. Let's click next on that. Now all of our clearances look great, but I've forgotten the Z depth I want to use for this profile operation. So I can use this option called Pick Z, take my cursor and left click any vertice on the solid model, and OneCNC automatically extrapolates that depth and places it in here. I want to cut a little deeper than that, so I'm going to backspace out the 25 and just type in a 3. So we're going to be ultimately machining this at Z-1 inch 300 thousandths. Let's click next on that. We're going to be using cut levels. We'll click next on this. Don't need to worry about a step over. We're going to leave 0 on the sides because this is going to be a finish pass. Don't need to worry about the wall taper here. We'll click next on that. I do not need an extra finish pass. We'll click next on that. And for our lead in and lead out values, we're going to use line arc. I'm going to arc in at 45 degrees and use a 200 thousandths arc radius for both the lead in and the lead out. Let's click finish and let OneCNC generate the toolpath. Let's drill the holes now. Let's head back over to the command manager and select drill single. From there, we're going to tell OneCNC how we want to select the holes. I'm going to use arc center, and I'm just going to take my cursor and I'm just going to left-hand mouse click the center of the holes in the order in which I'd like to perform the drilling operation. And when I'm finished, I can right-hand mouse click and select finish. And just like before, the very first dialog box is where we define a tool. We can create a tool manually or select a tool from the tool library. For this drill, I'm going to place it in turret position number 5. I'm going to say the speeds and feeds look great. My tool holder looks good. Using a 1/4 inch drill. Let's click next on that. Our rapid Z-plane and plunge clearance looks good. Material Z-top I have set at -1 inch 125 thousandths, and that's simply because that's the Z level of the face of this flange right here. And then for the final Z depth, I don't need to go that deep, maybe just 1 inch 400 thousandths. For this, I'm going to be using a canned cycle. That's why I have machine cycle selected. And for the canned cycle, I'm going to be using G81. Let's click Finish and let OneCNC generate the toolpath. All right, let's perform another drilling operation on this hole. So back over into the Command Manager, drill single, arc center, left click the center of the hole, then right-hand mouse click and select Finish. This drill is going to be in turret position number 6. I'm going to reduce the RPM just a little bit. I'm going to leave the feed rate alone. This is going to be a 1/2 inch diameter, so 0.5. Let's click Next on that. I'm going to increase the Z depth to -1 inch 700 thousandths. That looks good. I do want to use a can cycle again, so I have machine cycle selected and I'm using a G81 for this. Let's click Finish and let OneCNC generate the toolpath. All right, now that's all the machining operations for this side of the part. I think this is a good time now to simulate all of our toolpath. So let's head back over to the NC Manager. I'm going to right-hand mouse click on Toolpath Group and select Simulate Rest. We're going to use Pick a Boundary. The top of the stock's at 0, bottom of the stock at -1.5 inches. Let's click OK. And then we can take our cursor and left-click the boundary. And when we're finished, we can right-hand mouse click to review the toolpath simulation. So to begin with, we have our roughing operation. Then we have our planar finish facing operation to machine the top of the part. And then we're using a Z-level finish command to finish the outside of the part. Now because it's a ball-end mill, we came back in with a taper tool to make that sharp edge and then drill the holes. All right, that's it for this training video. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.